The dining room glowed with crystal chandeliers and hushed conversations. Waiters in black vests glided between white tablecloths and polished silverware. She had barely taken a step inside when the words cut through the air like glass. "Ma'am, this section is for real guests. Perhaps you'd feel more comfortable somewhere else." The waiter's tone was polite, but his eyes carried the weight of dismissal. Nearby diners paused, glancing up with curiosity and quiet judgment. The woman didn't flinch. She adjusted the strap of her leather clutch, her calm gaze fixed on the man who had already decided she didn't belong. They didn't know who she was. Not yet. The maitre d' podium gleamed under the golden light of the chandeliers, polished wood against the soft hum of conversation. Dr. Olivia Carter approached with quiet elegance, her long black dress simple yet refined, her heels clicking softly on the marble floor. She carried herself with the confidence of someone who had walked through boardrooms and lecture halls. Yet every eye that turned toward her weighed her down with unspoken assumptions. Behind the podium stood Mr. Langston, the restaurant manager, his posture rigid, his smile thin and rehearsed. He scanned the reservation book, eyes flicking up at Olivia with a skepticism he didn't bother to hide. "Name?" he asked curtly. "Carter. Olivia Carter. I reserved a table for 8 o'clock. Langston's brow furrowed as he traced the page slowly, as though the letters might rearrange themselves into something he expected. Finally, he tapped the entry with his finger. "Yes. I see the reservation." His lips curled slightly, the shadow of a smirk. "But perhaps you'd be more comfortable in the cafe down the street. They have," he lowered his voice, "a more casual menu." Olivia's dark eyes didn't waver. She rested her clutch against the podium, her voice calm, almost disarmingly soft. "No. This reservation is mine. Here." Langston hesitated, then motioned toward a dim corner near the kitchen doors, far from the glowing centerpiece tables reserved for the evening's elite. "Very well. Follow me." As they passed rows of pristine white tablecloths and crystal stemware, heads turned. A couple whispered. A businessman glanced at his watch, as though the very sight of her presence delayed his evening. Olivia walked on, unbothered outwardly, though each step pressed against the weight of silent judgment. When she reached her seat, Langston gestured sharply. "Here you are." The table sat too close to the swinging kitchen doors, where the clatter of pans and bursts of steam intruded on the soft violin music drifting through the dining room. It was a place no regular guest of importance would ever be asked to sit. Olivia adjusted her chair, her expression unreadable, and placed her clutch neatly on the table. They thought they had placed her in her corner. But this was only the beginning. The chair creaked faintly as Dr. Olivia Carter settled in, smoothing the fabric of her dress as though it were armor. Around her, laughter rang over glasses of champagne, the chime of silver cutlery against porcelain. A server in a black vest drifted past one table with a tray of oysters, past another with a gleaming bottle of Bordeaux. When he reached Olivia, he paused. His name tag read Ethan, but his posture spoke louder than any introduction. Shoulders squared, chin tilted slightly upward, he regarded her the way one might regard an unwelcome guest at a private party. "Water." His tone was flat, disinterested. "Tap, I assume?" Olivia looked up slowly, her gaze unwavering. "Sparkling, please." A faint twitch of his mouth, half smirk, half disbelief, crossed his face. "Of course," he said, jotting nothing on his pad, as if convinced she'd change her mind once she saw the prices. He handed her a menu without flourish, without the practiced courtesy he had showered on the table across the room. The menu itself was heavy, leather-bound, but he dropped it onto the white linen with a thud, the sound drawing the attention of a nearby couple. They glanced at Olivia, then back at their autres, whispering behind raised glasses. "Tonight's special," Ethan continued, "is chicken Alfredo. Affordable. Filling." His eyes darted briefly over her dress, her bag, her face, each glance a silent verdict. "Perhaps something simple?" Olivia opened the menu without a word. The golden lettering reflected in her dark eyes, but she had already memorized the offerings. She knew this restaurant well. She had studied its profits, its clientele, its every margin. But that knowledge remained her quiet secret. "I'll have the Wagyu filet," she said evenly. "Medium rare." Ethan's pen hovered. His brows lifted. "The Wagyu," he repeated, his voice slightly louder. Enough for the businessman at the next table to overhear. The man chuckled under his breath, shaking his head. "Yes," Olivia replied. "And bring me a glass of the 2014 Chateau Margaux." The pause was deliberate. Ethan tilted his head, eyes narrowing. "That bottle is—" He lowered his voice theatrically, as if sharing a secret. $700. Several diners turned their heads, curiosity lighting their eyes. A woman at the far table whispered, "She can't possibly afford that." Olivia's lips curved, just barely, into the faintest suggestion of a smile. "One glass will do." Ethan stood stiff for a moment, then forced a thin smile. "Very well," he said, though his tone betrayed disbelief. He scribbled the order as though it were a charade, a joke played in plain sight. As he walked away, the clatter of dishes and the murmur of voices filled the silence he left behind. Olivia placed her hands lightly on the table, steady, unmoving. The disdain, the whispers, the humiliation, they pressed against her like waves. But beneath her calm exterior, she was not drowning. She was measuring the tide. The chandeliers glowed golden, the hum of violins floated through the dining room, but at Olivia Carter's table, the atmosphere thickened with quiet hostility. When Ethan returned, balancing a tray with a single crystal glass, he set it down as if handling fragile porcelain for a child. The deep garnet wine shimmered in the light, its bouquet rich, commanding. But his words stripped away the dignity of the ritual. "Before I open the bottle fully," he said, his voice louder now, drawing the attention of nearby tables, "I'll need to collect payment in advance. Restaurant policy, for certain customers." The phrase hung in the air, venom disguised as professionalism. A ripple of laughter rose from a corner table. A suited man leaned toward his companion, whispering, "Knew it. She's out of her depth." His companion smirked, sipping champagne as though savoring the scene. Olivia didn't reach for her wallet. She lifted her eyes instead, meeting Ethan's stare with the calm weight of centuries behind her. "Interesting," she murmured. "Policy, you say?" Ethan shifted, but he didn't lower his tone. "Yes, ma'am. We've had situations in the past. We can't risk—" He stopped, letting the implication dangle like a blade. The restaurant manager, Mr. Langston, appeared beside him, drawn by the tension like a moth to flame. His smile was sharp, rehearsed. "Is there a problem here?" "No problem," Ethan said quickly. "Just ensuring we don't extend services beyond a guest's ability to pay." Langston nodded approvingly. "Wise precaution. These wines are expensive, you know. Perhaps, Miss Carter, a more modest selection would be suitable." A hush fell over the dining room. Conversations paused, forks hovered midair. Even the violinist faltered, the bow dragging a dissonant note across the strings. All eyes turned to Olivia, waiting to see if she would shrink, argue, storm out. Waiting to see the confirmation of the story they had already written about her. But she didn't flinch. She didn't move. She folded her hands on the white linen tablecloth, her voice steady, almost tender. "Bring me the wine I ordered. And keep the receipt. I'll need it." Langston's smirk faltered for the briefest moment. Ethan hesitated, glancing between his manager and Olivia, unsure if the performance should continue. Around them, whispers surged like static. Who does she think she is? Probably maxed out credit cards. This is embarrassing. For her. But Olivia's composure never cracked. Her silence wasn't weakness. It was the slow gathering of a storm. And no one in that room had any idea how powerful the lightning would be when it struck. The Wagyu fillet arrived beneath a gleaming silver cloche, presented with exaggerated flourish, as though mocking her audacity. The waiter placed the dish before her with a faint smirk, as if already anticipating the spectacle of her embarrassment when the bill arrived. The room had grown restless, every table feeding on the tension. Some watched openly, others from the corner of their eyes, but all were united by curiosity. Would she pay? Would she fail? Olivia lifted her fork, cut a precise slice of steak, and tasted it without hurry. Her calmness unnerved them more than outrage ever could. She dabbed her lips with the linen napkin, then reached for her leather clutch. Gasps fluttered across the dining room as she drew out a slim black folder. It looked too official, too deliberate, too unlike a wallet. She opened it slowly, sliding a single ivory business card across the tablecloth. Carter Dining Group. Dr. Olivia Carter, majority investor. The manager, Mr. Langston, froze mid-step. His lips parted, but no words emerged. Ethan, the waiter, leaned closer, his eyes narrowing in disbelief, until the gold-embossed lettering left no room for doubt. "I don't just dine here," Olivia said softly, her voice carrying farther than she expected in the stunned silence. "I own here." The words detonated in the room. Forks clattered against plates. Someone stifled a gasp. At the far end, a woman whispered, "Oh my God." Langston's face drained of color. He reached for the card with trembling fingers, reading it once, twice, as if hoping the letters might rearrange themselves into something less damning. But they did not. Ethan stammered, I didn't realize." Olivia's gaze was unflinching. "No, you didn't." Her calmness cut deeper than anger, her measured tone sharper than any raised voice. Around her, the very same diners who had smirked and whispered now sat rigid, their curiosity transformed into shame. For the first time that evening, silence belonged to her. And she intended to use it well. The air in the dining room felt different now. Thicker, heavier, as if every chandelier crystal trembled with the weight of what had just been revealed. Forks lay abandoned, glasses hovered untouched. No one dared move. Dr. Olivia Carter sat with her back straight, her business card still resting on the linen like evidence at a trial. Across from her, Mr. Langston, the manager who had sneered so easily, stood pale, his polished confidence stripped away. Ethan, the waiter, shifted nervously at his side, clutching his notepad like a shield. Olivia's voice was soft, but it carried through the silence with the force of a gavel. "You dismissed me without looking. You humiliated me without thought. And you nearly reduced me to a spectacle for your dining room." Langston's lips parted. "Dr. Carter, I sincerely apologize. This was a terrible misunderstanding." Was it? Olivia's eyes never wavered. Or was it policy, as you called it? A policy of assumption. A culture of prejudice. Her words landed like stones in a still pond, rippling outward. Diners shifted uncomfortably, their earlier whispers now sour in their throats. A woman at the corner table looked down at her plate, ashamed. A man in a tailored suit adjusted his tie, avoiding Olivia's gaze. Ethan finally spoke, his voice trembling. "We didn't mean." Olivia raised a hand, silencing him. "Intentions do not erase impact. How many others have you treated this way? How many people left this restaurant ashamed, humiliated, believing they didn't belong, because you decided they didn't?" The silence that followed was suffocating. Even the violinist had stopped playing, his bow resting midair. Olivia leaned forward slightly, her composure unshaken. "This isn't about a glass of wine or a table by the kitchen. This is about a culture. A culture where dignity is measured by appearance, where worth is judged by skin and clothing instead of respect." Her eyes swept the room, locking briefly with those of the diners who had laughed earlier. None dared meet her gaze for long. "And culture," she said firmly, "must change." Langston swallowed hard. "Dr. Carter, please. We'll make this right. Tell us what you'd like. A complimentary meal, a public apology." Olivia's faint smile returned, cool and controlled. "You think this is about dinner? No. This is about the entire Carter dining group. About every restaurant you operate. Change won't come from apologies whispered in the shadows. It will come from training, accountability, and transparency." She slid another document across the table, this one bearing the logo of her investment firm. "Starting tomorrow, every restaurant in this group will undergo independent audits and mandatory diversity training. There will be new reporting systems for incidents like this, and there will be consequences for ignoring them. And I will personally oversee it." Gasps rippled again, but this time not of mockery, of realization. This was no guest making idle threats. This was power, precise and undeniable. Olivia sat back, her tone quiet but unyielding. True luxury is not silver cutlery or crystal glasses. It is dignity. And if this restaurant cannot serve dignity with its meals, then it will serve nothing at all. The weight of her words settled like a final verdict. The room, once complicit, now bore witness to something larger than a confrontation. It was a reckoning. And Olivia Carter had just declared it. Weeks later, the glow of crystal chandeliers still lit the dining room of the city's most prestigious restaurant, but the air inside was different. Whispers had turned into cautious respect. The same staff who once smirked now greeted every guest with genuine courtesy, their posture less rigid, their eyes more careful. The change had been swift and absolute. Carter Dining Group, under the direct oversight of Dr. Olivia Carter, had rolled out new policies across every restaurant in its portfolio. Discrimination audits. Anonymous reporting hotlines. Mandatory cultural training sessions led not by consultants in suits but by voices who knew what prejudice felt like on their skin. Complaints dropped. Customer satisfaction soared. Industry magazines began writing not about the group's cuisine, but about its culture. The Carter Standard, one headline read, "How one incident reshaped fine dining." And still, Olivia remained silent in the public eye. She hadn't given interviews or posed for glossy covers. Her power wasn't in cameras or headlines, it was in the quiet permanence of change. One evening, she returned to the same restaurant. The maitre d' stiffened when he saw her, but this time his voice was careful, reverent. "Dr. Carter, welcome back. Your table is ready." He led her not to a corner by the kitchen, but to the center of the dining room, beneath the chandeliers, where the air shimmered with light and possibility. Diners looked up, some recognizing her, others simply sensing the shift in how she was received. The waiter approached nervously. "Ethan." He placed the menu down gently, his voice softer than before. "Sparkling water, Dr. Carter?" Her eyes flicked to him briefly, and for the first time, there was no smirk on his face. Only sincerity. He had learned. Perhaps too late for his pride, but not too late for his future. Olivia nodded, a faint smile crossing her lips. Yes. Sparkling will do. As he retreated, she opened the menu, not to read but to remember. This was the same room, the same white linen, the same polished silver. But it was no longer the same culture. The humiliation she had endured that night had not ended in revenge. It had ended in transformation. She glanced at her reflection in the wine glass, her voice echoing in memory. I don't just dine here. I own here. Now, the words meant more than ownership. They meant accountability. They meant change. For every guest who would walk through these doors after her, dignity would no longer be optional. It would be served with every meal. And that was her true investment.